piston. Okay, that is what we are studying so far. When we push, if so, someone trying to join, no. Okay, if you push a piston, then you see shock wave getting formed. But if you withdraw the piston, okay, if the piston moves back, then expansion wave is generated. Okay, now we'll look at the equations, but the idea is that the front of the wave travels with the speed a4. Okay, you can call it expansion wave or expansion fan. Various terms are used in the different textbooks. So what happens is, when as your piston starts moving backward, this disturbance or this wave, it is basically trying to tell the fluid that is lying ahead that something has changed, some disturbance is there. That is what we term as expansion wave. So it will travel with the speed a4 into the undisturbed fluid, which is lying in the cylinder, ahead of cylinder. Okay, opposite to the cylinder motion, piston motion. Piston will move back and this wave will travel forward. And generally we consider this wave to be isentropic. So we can use isentropic relations derived previously, and it travels at the speed of sound. Okay, that are the general assumptions for expansion fan. So this is how it will look. So basically you can see that this is the piston which I am pulling back. It is moved back suddenly, and these are the wave fronts. Okay, we'll talk about them in a little bit. Let us look at the pressure distribution. So you see front or ahead of the wave, you see a higher pressure P4, and behind the wave expansion fan, we see a lower pressure. Why this lower pressure is created? Because piston is suddenly moving back. So the volume available increases. It is like sort of creating a void here, and the gases here, they are moving in this direction to fill up that void. And because of that, suddenly there is a decrease in pressure. Okay, that is also you can see in the velocity plot. So V is equal to 0 for undisturbed fluid, which is lying here, is undisturbed, and velocity is 0. It is just lying there, not. In this region, the fluid starts to move back to fill this void, and we see a negative velocity, and that is exactly equal to the piston velocity, but in the reverse direction. They are following the piston, that's all. So this is how we physically interpret. Now let us look at the plot for it. So we write some correction. So this shows you basically x is your distance from this, from where the piston starts to move. Okay, so what it shows you is that piston, first of all, let us talk about the piston. So piston is, let us say, started from here. This is the origin. It started to move back. So piston is going in negative x direction. The y-axis shows time. So with time, the piston is, location is more and more negative x, and you can see that it is, let us say it is moving at a constant velocity. So piston moves back in x direction, negative x, with increasing time. Someone is trying to join or what? Okay, fine. So where were we? Yeah, so this is about the piston. Now let us talk about the wave. So as you see, there is not one wave, there are multiple waves. This is basically, that's why we call it as a fan. So as you can see, let us say there are 3-4 wave fronts. Okay, now the speed of this wave front will be different from this speed. Okay, so which one is moving fast and which one is moving slow? Can anyone tell me? I am giving a statement that they are moving at different speeds or different velocities. Now looking at this plot, can anyone tell which one is faster or which one is slower? So you can look at which wave. Okay,
4.
4 is what? Fast or slow?
Faster.
Faster. It's the minimum time is less and travel more.
Correct. Very good. So as you can see, 4 is in the same time. They all started from here at t1. 4 is at this. Let us say this is the x-axis, right? So 4 is here, and it is not 4. Basically 4 is this condition, but let us say these are 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 waves are there. Let us name them A, B, C, D, something like that for our convenience. Okay. So wave D is here. Wave A, which is also started at E0, that has reached up to this location. So let us say this is x of A and x of D. So clearly D has traveled more, so it is moving faster, and that difference is visible in xy time. This is x and this is time. Y axis is time. So that is what is happening here, and as you can see here, this is sort of expanding. This is opening like a Japanese fan. That is why it is also called expansion fan or expansion wave. Okay. So for this speed CE, that is given by A4. What is the speed of sound in the stagnant air or undisturbed air? That speed plus gamma plus 1 by 2 into V. V is generally the piston speed. Okay. Now here V is less than 0. V is negative because fluid is moving back. Therefore C decreases continuously through the wave. Okay. This will decrease continuously as you move along. Now fan of straight line shown are line of constant C. So these are the lines of constant C. Okay. Thus all these lines have constant velocity and constant rho. Okay. And these lines are called characteristics. These are characteristics for expansion fan or expansion wave. Moving on, with increasing time, as I said, this fan becomes wider. Okay. Wider means the gradient of velocity and density will become smaller. And generally, it is a good approximation or assumption if I say that these waves are isentropic. Okay. And the terminating characteristics, that will be x by t, will be given by CA3 A4 minus. So this is the terminating last one. It is given by, instead of V, you will write VP, speed of piston. So V, I think I did a mistake here. So we will be varying for each wave. For the last one, it will be equal to piston speed, modulus of that piston speed, because actually this value is negative. We'll take the positive and we will add minus here. Okay. Now, what about the slope? Slope is from, if you talk from right to left, whether your A4 is more or this is more. Okay, there are two quantities, right? A4 and gamma plus 1 by 2 into Vp. So depending on which one is higher, that will determine your slope. And between the terminating characteristic and piston, we assume that between your wave and the piston surface, these properties are uniform: pressure, density, and speed of sound. And for a perfect gas, we say that density ratio and pressure ratio are given by asentropic. So you can use asentropic relations, and as I said, asentropic behavior is generally accepted or a good approximation for this type of behavior for expansion fan. So if I say that asentropic relations are valid, I can find pressure density ratio and pressure ratio using these relations. Also, when you talk about this ratio, what is the pressure drop or pressure ratio across the fan? That gives you the strength of the fan. How much pressure is changing across the fan, that is what determines it. And if you want to give see maximum expansion, that will correspond to rho is equal to 0. Okay, basically it says that after the fan there is a void. Okay, then nothing is there. So that will correspond to your piston velocity will be equal to 2A4 gamma divided by gamma minus 1. And for this case, so when you say rho 3 is 0, P3, everything is 0. Basically, theoretically you are saying that everything is vanished there. It is a, let us say, void. So we say that all the fluid energy is converted to kinetic energy of flow. And if the piston velocity is more than this limiting value, causing this to be zero, it has no further effect on the flow. So it is analogous to getting choked. If you keep on increasing the piston velocity, that doesn't mean that other things are also get affected. Once it reaches the limiting value, then it will not, piston velocity will not have any effect on the expansion fan. Okay. So now why we studied expansion fan is there's a very interesting practical application. Okay. So two things we have studied so far: shock wave and expansion fan. Okay, they have various applications, and in various processes you can see those happening. But one interesting application is shock tube, where we will see both shock wave and expansion fan at the same time in the same tube. Okay, so let us see what is the shock tube first. So it is a device which generates high speed flow and high temperatures are attained by what? By letting one normal shock move across a tube. Okay, which basically it is by rupture of a diaphragm. So what we have, as we'll see a schematic in the next slide. Let me go to it. So basically what we have is, let us say there's a normal tube. It should be like strong enough to sustain high pressures and oscillations. One side you will have a low pressure region and one side you will have high pressure region. And in between you have a diaphragm which separates that. So generally it is made of metal or any other material. Once you break the diaphragm, then fluid starts to move forward. Okay. So basically that was the diaphragm which is mentioned here. Once the diaphragm is ruptured or it is broken by some mechanical means, a high pressure gas from low pressure gas that starts to flow, right? And there are various applications or areas where shock tube is important. One of them is chemical kinetics. For example, combustion. So you have a new fuel, or if you are trying to get some kinetic rates for different fuels, what are the steps involved, what are the intermediate forms. So for a lot of things, shock tube is a very important device. And another interesting thing is like, for example, when your space shuttle or something is re-entering the Earth atmosphere. Okay, so what happens? How it will sustain the heat, whether the design is good or not. These type of things you can study using shock tube. Okay, now let us look at this slide. So as I explained, this is the simplest way you can represent a shock tube. There's nothing more complicated. One tube is there with two regions, high pressure and low pressure. Only so the interesting thing is it has to be thick walled. Okay, otherwise it will not sustain high pressure, and it could be circular or square or any other cross section you want. But the important thing is that your inner surface should be very smooth. Okay, anyone can tell me why is that? Why should I need a smooth surface? Smooth inner surface. Any guess why? What will happen if the surface is not smooth?
Friction?
No. Friction will anyway be there. It will not be a frictionless flow, but smooth or rough surface, what effect will it have? Let us say, I'm exaggerating a bit. So let us say this has some small dimples or something is coming out. The metal inside is not very smoothly polished or finished.
Cavitation?
So what, no, I'm making a very big, it will be small protrusions, let us say. So remember, we are talking about, okay, I'll give you a hint. We are talking about very high speed flows. So once you remove this diaphragm, the fluid will start moving at very high speeds. So when it is moving at high speed, if we have something there, what will happen? Will it not create shock? Yes or no? If something is there in the path of a very...
Sir, backflow?
Yes? Yes, someone
Flow
said something.
separation.
Flow separation. No, no, no. I'm exaggerating it. It is not that you will have a very big obstacle or something. You will have small, small. See, if your surface finish is not good, your surface will not be rough. Rough means you'll have uh, some ups and downs like that. Okay, I'm making it very big. It will be a small object only. It will be if you look at some surface which is not finished properly, so some ups and downs will be there, some holes will be there. This is at microscopic level, right? But what will happen is that if the flow is supersonic, this will be it will be like a obstacle, so it will create a shock. Even though you have a very small protrusion here, it will create a shock. Yes or no? See, when we talk about, go back to initial slides. See, what do you see here? That if in the flow where we have supersonic flow, if you put a bluff body or an obstacle, we see shocks, right? These are shock waves. So it doesn't require that you keep a big body also, even if there is a small, let us say something coming out from the wall, that will also create shock. Is this clear or not clear? You people are getting what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I actually made little big, but there will be a lot of small. See, if surface is not anyway, it is not possible to like make it smooth at the molecular level. Okay, so if you look at any surface closely, there will be some ups and downs here. The surface will not be very microscopically smooth. So even small protrusions. Okay, see if you let us say if you take a surface, a finished metal surface, you look using a microscope. So the surface naked eye it will look like this, but if you look using a microscope, it will be something like this. Okay, you can do a Google or maybe I will get some microscopic images picture and show you in the next class. But at the surface level, at very small scale, all the finished surface also look like this. Okay, even if you look at some very flat surface, microscopic level it will have some perturbations. Okay, this cannot be like flat surface. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So inside the tube you will have some microscopic undulations. Okay, some small ups and downs will be there like this at the very small level. It will not be even maybe it is not even visible to you without any microscope. Naked eye you cannot see this. Naked eye you will see that it is a flat, but something will be there up and down. Okay, some perturbation will definitely be there depending on what manufacturing process you have used to finish that surface, whether you are grinding or you're just simply drilling a hole. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that even with very small disturbance or very small perturbation in the surface, it has the potential to generate a shock wave. Okay, that is what that's not what we want. We want to have a normal shock, and that's what only we want to study. We want that once I remove the diaphragm, one normal shock is created, which is moving forward, and that is what I want to study. I don't want a standing shock there. I don't want one oblique shock from coming from an obstacle in the wall. That will unnecessarily complicate your flow. Is this clear or not clear?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why we say that we need a very smooth inner surface. Basically, you need to use some good manufacturing process. That's all. Okay, you cannot remove molecular level of microscopic irregularities, but you can make it little bit smoother so that you don't see a lot of shock waves generated from every side, every corner of your wall. Some disturbance is creating shock wave. That is not what you want. You want this to be as low or as minimum as possible, so you have a clean flow without any experimental errors or issues. Okay, so that is about shock tube. Now let us see how it behaves. So what will happen is, once you remove, there's a diaphragm here, you rupture that, or let us say remove that, then okay, let us go back to this. Let us see where we have high and low pressure. So where do we have? High pressure is on the right side and low pressure is on the, sorry, high pressure is on the right side, low pressure is on left side. So what will happen if I remove this? Where will fluid move? To the left or to the right? Yes?
Left.
Left.
Left. Fluid moves from high pressure to low pressure. So fluid will start moving from right to left, and what will move to the right? Expansion wave. Right? You have created a sort of void here because fluid is starting to move on the left side. So in this region, a void is created because fluid is moving there. So that creates the expansion wave. That is what is moving. It is like there is no piston here, but you can imagine that one piston was sitting here and I am moving that piston to the left. Because of that, expansion fan will be created which will move to the right. Okay, so we'll see one shock wave traveling in the negative x direction because fluid is moving at high velocity in the left, and because of the sudden drop in pressure, we'll see expansion fan which is moving to the right. Is this clear to everyone, or should I explain it again? Yes or no? Tell me. If anyone has doubt, just let me know. People are here or not? All you are able to hear what I am saying?
Yes, sir.
So is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will explain it once more. So initially imagine that there is a membrane sitting at this location. Okay, once suddenly I remove that, then high pressure gases from this 3, the gases are stored at high pressure. Here the gases at low pressure. So that will suddenly start moving to the left, which will generate a shock wave and will travel at the speeds yes in region 1. Now once these gases started suddenly moving that side, it will suddenly create something like a void. Physically void will not be created, but apparent effect will be like some void is there and suddenly we are losing fluid, we are getting a pressure drop. So because of that, this expansion fan will be created which will move to the right, and that is exactly what is shown in this plot. It shows the xt plot. So with time, shock wave is traveling to the left, it is traveling in the negative x direction, and this expansion fan is traveling to the right side, it is moving to the positive x direction. That is what is being shown here, and these are the temperature and pressure distributions. So as you can see, T4, then across the fan the temperature decreases from T4 to T3. Similarly, pressure also decreases, and here we have P2 which further decreases because this is a shock front. So across the shock, the both temperature decreases and pressure decreases from T2 to T1 and P2 to P1. This is the working of a shock tube in a nutshell. This is the most simple schematic you'll see for a shock tube. Let me see if I have one more figure. Let me first go to that. Yeah, so it looks like this. So this left side is the driver section where you have high pressure fluid, and then you have low pressure fluid in the driven section. Okay, let us say this is your test section. Basically, you want high speed fluid to come and do some reaction or test some bluff body or something like that. So at t is equal to 0, this is the scenario. Now I remove the diaphragm and fluid starts moving to the right with incident shock, and because you are removing fluid from this is a high pressure region which is suddenly seeing a drop in pressure. That's why we see refraction waves moving towards the left. Okay, and this is the distribution of pressure. You see a gradual decrease across the expansion fan, right, and a sharp decrease across a pressure front. Shock front. So this is a shock. So suddenly the pressure drops. Okay. So just be careful that the schematic that I have shown, it has P4 or higher pressure at the right side, and here the P4 is on the left side. Otherwise, this is the same thing. This is what exactly happens in a shock tube. You can also refer to this link. It has a lot of details on working of a shock tube if you are interested. So this was about shock tube. Now let us look at some characteristic features. So one of the most important terms or parameters that we need to consider is shock strength, which is P2 by P1. Okay, and what we'll try to do is we'll try to derive an expression for this shock strength in terms of diaphragm pressure ratio. So across our diaphragm we see P4 to P1. So that is what we know initially. We know what are the initial pressures. So that is basically diaphragm pressure, and based on that we'll try to find out how much P2 by P1 we can generate. Okay, so once this is known, okay, once we know the shock strength, other parameters can straight away be taken from normal shock relations. That is quite straightforward. And basically the same thing, basic parameter is P4 by P1, the shock, diaphragm pressure ratio. And we have also different temperatures, T1 and T4, and it could also be, it is possible that because you have different temperatures, the gases will have different R. So all this we need to consider while we derive a relation for this. So now when, let us say at E is equal to 0, we remove the diaphragm or burst the diaphragm. So the pressure distribution is a step, okay, shock wave. That's what we have seen in the last slide. That propagates into low pressure chamber with speed Cs, and expansion wave propagates high pressure chamber with speed A4 at this front. That is what is shown here. So shock goes by the speed Cs, and this expansion wave with the speed A4. And basically it's talking about the how we denote. So fluid which is traversed by shock, that is denoted by subscript 2, and the region where expansion wave has passed, that is denoted by 3. So that is what you see. Started from here, now shock is moving left, so this region is 2, and expansion wave is moving past, has moved past 3, so this region is 3. That is how we basically use this subscript that will detailed derivation. This is the convention that will maintain. Okay, now interface between 2 and 3. This region is called 2 and 3. This is called contact surface. Okay, it basically marks the boundary where diaphragm was there. So diaphragm was separating high pressure and low pressure fluid. Once we remove that, this is called contact surface or a boundary of high and low pressures. And let us say if you forget about diffusion for a moment, you can say that we can assume that high pressure and low pressure gases do not mix. Basically it is just pushing that gas, it is not mixing. And it is also somewhat okay to assume that these gases are permanently separated. Even though you have removed the diaphragm, these gases are separated and it is just pushing this towards. Okay, so if I assume that, I can say that, let us say that we have a imaginary piston here. Okay, gases are not getting mixed, but this high pressure gas is basically pushing this gas. So if it is not mixing, we can as well as has a piston here. So piston is there which is moving through, and basically it is driving the moving from high pressure to low pressure region, or driver section to driven section. That is the theoretical or imaginary experiment. We can assume that piston is moving to left, this contact surface that you can see in this plot. That is basically what we have seen here. So if you look at the colored zones, you can see that this gray zone and this blue, they are not mixing, but blue is basically sort of, let us say, pushing this towards the right. That is what we assumed here, that piston is acting like a contact surface. So now let us talk about the contact surface. So either side we have different temperatures and densities. Okay, but pressure will be the same. Okay, because there is no unbalanced pressure. It is moving along. So pressure is same. So I can say P2 is equal to P3 and V2 is equal to V3. And V2 is the velocity of contact surface. So using these conditions and P2 by P1, also P3 by P4. So these two pressure ratios we'll use, and we'll use these conditions. We can find what are the different pressure ratios using isentropic relations. Okay, we assume this, expansion fan to be isentropic. Then we can find out pressure ratio, density ratio, and Vp. Similarly, V2 is given by this, and V3 is given by this expression. Now, last slide we assume that V2 and V3 are same, and P2 and P3 are same. So using that, I can also derive a ratio for P4 by P1 and in terms of P2 by P1. This is what we are initially planned. That was the objective, that shock strength can be obtained as a function of P4 by P1. Okay. So once you have this relation, you can also obtain expansion strength, which is P3 by P4, using this expression. So whatever we have seen so far, what we can say is that shock strength P2 by P1 is known. We can get other flow quantities. This is what we mentioned initially, that once we find this, other quantities can be obtained from normal shock relations. And see, there are two sides. One section is where we have normal shock. One section is where we have expansion fan. So for normal shock side, left side of the contact surface, I can use normal shock relations. On the right side, where we say that expansion fan is there, which is isentropic, I can use isentropic relation to find required properties. And this is how we can find them. So we can simply get the relation for temperature, pressure in these terms. Okay, now what are the applications for the shock tube? So we can use it as a basically short duration wind tunnel. It will not run for, let us say, it will be a few milliseconds, but you can obtain some very useful information using this apparatus. And basically we have very high temperature, velocity, or stagnation enthalpies. This cannot be obtained in a normal wind tunnel or generally what devices we use. So this is one of the major uses or advantages of having a shock tube. Okay, now we can also use it for transient conditions. Okay, we can look into dynamic and thermal response. Why? Because there are abrupt changes. So you can mimic a practical case where you see abrupt changes, and based on that you can do your study. And you can basically kinetics and chemical kinetics dissociation. This is also very useful, especially when I work for, basically my research areas in combustion. So in combustion you can actually generate a lot of kinetics data. This is how basically the chemical kinetics is studied. You do experiments using shock tubes, and then you obtain, you can see what are the reaction rates, what radicals are getting formed, things like that. So with that, we have finished this chapter on normal shocks. We stop the recording and then we can discuss if we have any questions.